Okay, I'm going to hand the floor over to George.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, it is my very great pleasure to introduce this evening's speaker, Adrian Mendoza, an old friend of mine who, as we were talking a little earlier, as he mentioned, we've known each other since probably the early 90s, I think. And um, when we both were in Modesto, and Adrian had a long career in the Central Valley as a photojournalist. And when I knew him, he worked for the McClatchy organization, the Modesto Bee. Uh, so that is one aspect of his photography. But even to me, some ways more interesting is the things that he's done with it after leaving the Bee and moving to the Bay Area. Um, you're going to see a lot of things. And Adrian's a very creative guy. He's done fantastic things with uh, the production of his photo art and some of the techniques that I just think are really stunning. I will say, in addition, the two of us are both music fans and have some musical taste in common, and we connected on that level, both in Modesto and in the Bay Area. So, yeah, it's a real pleasure to have Adrian with us this evening, and I think you guys are all in for a treat.
Thank you, George. Greatly appreciated. Um, and give my best to Elise when you see her.
I will, and she's in the other room.
Okay.
Yep. Let's see.
All right, it's up on the screen. Do you see it?
Yes.
Great. All right, go for it, Adrian.
Can you fill the screen so there's we tried it before and there you go. Okay. That's my website, adrianmendozaphotography.com. I mean, there's no link there, but that's my full name and what I do, and it just put in .com at the end of that right there. And so thank you, George, for the introduction, and I'm really pleased to be able to present this, my photographs, my passion, my art, to whoever would listen. And I had the privilege of being a photojournalist to get paid to take photographs for a total of 23 years for two different newspapers in the Central Valley. The Manteca News, which is about 15 miles north of Modesto. And Modesto was my hometown where I was born. And I worked for that newspaper, the Modesto Bee, for 17 years. And then after leaving the Modesto Bee in 2008, I moved to San Francisco in 2011, and then to Santa Rosa in 2013. I've been here ever since. So we can go to the next photo if you want. Okay. So that's a self-portrait 1979 with, as you can see, I'm a real equipment geek. I worked at camera stores and went to thrift stores, and I love books. And so this pretty much encapsulates who I am and what I do, and kind of my trajectory in collecting these different cameras of all different sorts. I've been a Canon person since the beginning, 1975, 74, excuse me. So I'm into my 50th year now of photography. And I'll show you examples as we go along. It's not in chronological order, but you'll understand as we go along. As a photojournalist, it is said both about journalist and photojournalism that it is a first draft of history. And so that's kind of my modus operandi in approaching the way that I take photographs, and that is the title of the show. The presentation is for the record, photography as evidence, and it's not legal evidence, but just kind of a record of our history, of the path that we walk in life. And so we can go to the next one. Go ahead and go to the next shot. So this was at the beginning in 1974. I was working for a newspaper, not newspaper, excuse me, for a movie theater in Southern California. And one day, my boss said that our flagship theater in Westwood Village was having the premiere to the film The Towering Inferno. And so I was asked to go provide, extra labor there along the way of being an usher and things like that. And finally, the division manager said that they had enough people, and I had just purchased my camera, Canon FTB, 2 months before that. And so when he said that he didn't need me to work there, I said, "Can I take photographs?" And he said, "Sure." So I was behind the red rope, and that's when I first learned about the importance of access. And so I took photographs. Gregory Peck was my icon ever since I saw, To Kill a Mockingbird. And in high school, I was very interested in acting. So he and Gene Hackman and Henry Fonda were all there, as was Mary Tyler Moore and even Groucho Marx. And the one thing that I learned, in addition to that access is everything, I also learned that it's important to take more than one roll of 36 exposure black and white film, which is all that I had. And so after 36 exposure, I was done and couldn't take any more photographs. Any questions about it? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We can take questions as we go along. Feel free, rather than ask questions at the end. This will give you a chance to respond, for both of us to have this conversation as we go. I know we still need to keep a quick clip so that we can finish on time. So if there's any questions, go ahead. If not, we can move on to the next one. Now, these are my father's hands. And as you can see, I do not have my father's hands. I am a photographer. He was a laborer. He was a self-educated man, which I mostly am myself. And so trial and error, and that, despite not having a journalism degree, I still was able to get a job after a lot of trial and error, a lot of personal interest, a lot of practice. I got hired on through the newspapers and had a good career there. And I still consider myself a photojournalist, even though I haven't worked as a photojournalist officially since 2008. Okay. So as you go along as photographers, this is, you can also photograph people who this is kind of an unofficial assignment for you all to think of people's hands, whether it be family members, whether it be strangers, whether it be children, to include kind of the things that they do to capture the personality. And I think sometimes the hands can inform more than even the face. So I like the portraits of hands as well. Go on to the next one. There you go. Speaking of which, these are this is a photograph of the hands of Dave Brubeck, the jazz legend. I had the opportunity in 2007 to photograph him by way of a former coworker of mine, who was a reporter at the Mendoza, who went on to become the public information officer at the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. And UOP, University of the Pacific, was Dave Brubeck's alma mater. And so we can go to the next photo. And there's Dave Brubeck. So, so these are some of the things that the privilege that I got to have as a photographer. it sure beat working for a living, and I am proud to still be able to be doing that and photographing music and portraiture and pretty much anything that catches my interest. Any questions at all? Okay.
Just so you know, they're going to raise their hand with the little button, and Donald will let us know.
Okay. Okay. This was one of my earliest portraits that I did in Modesto. It was, as you can see, he's wearing a little "I have voted" little tag on him right there. This is 1976. And this was also, it was Mr. Draper. And this was also the very first photograph that I took of on 11th Street in Modesto. And 11th Street in Modesto was what I identified because I drove it every day to work for 17 years, was the corridor of power. And George, who lived in Modesto, he can attest to that as well. So and he worked on 11th Street as well. So before I even began the project of documenting 11th Street, I had already begun with this photograph of Mr. Draper. And this was, like I said, 1976. 20 years later, in 1996, was when one day I was driving to work and I saw someone really interesting walking down the street. I pulled over and asked if I could get a photograph of her, which I did. And from then on, I decided that was going to be a project. I probably have, let's say I started that in 96 officially. And I probably have taken 100,000 photographs, more or less, on 11th Street since then. And I don't know when it'll be finished, but I go back from time to time to Modesto, and I always find something there. I kind of had the unofficial title of the mayor of 11th Street. So there you go. Next.
For some reason it's not going. Let's see.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay, this photograph was taken of my ex-wife's grandfather. This was in Mexico. This was what I did. Oh, I forgot to tell you the technique that I used in photographing Mr. Draper a couple of frames back was standing against a black background, right? And so we can go to the next one. And so this portrait I did of my ex-wife's grandfather, was also placed him against in a doorway where the light just fell off. It wasn't a studio; it was just outdoors with available light, and the light just fell off. And I just love a black background; it just makes them stand out right there. So I love that technique for doing portraits. Next. And this is my ex-wife right there. The photograph on the left this was on 11th Street in the county courthouse. The photograph on the left was the day that we were married in a civil ceremony in the courthouse. And the one on the right, 27 years later, was when our divorce was final in the courthouse. And so she even, allowed me to do that as we were divorcing. So, and this photograph was on 11th Street as well, corner of 11th and J Street. And the woman on the left, well, the two people are the same. The one on the left, Bethany, and her daughter Rita, was taken in 2012. And the photograph on the right was taken 10 years later at the same spot. And Bethany was able to wear the same clothes and she still fit into it. And Rita recreated the clothes that she was wearing, including the bandana. And so I want you to think about this, about this goes back to what I was saying. The title of this presentation is "The Photograph as Evidence," for the record. So this just shows, same thing with the photograph of Mike's wife, to show the same people over time. So
So let me ask, when you shot this, was this your plan ahead of time?
Not ahead of time, no. It was one day I was going into town for a couple of weeks, and I just thought about that, and I called Bethany, and I asked her if she would be willing to do that, and so she and her daughter both agreed to that. Next, okay. Now this is one of my absolute favorite photographs. This was taken for the Manteca News. This was the young girl is holding a carnation that was given to her mother, who was in the background holding the little girl's younger brother, the mother's youngest, young son, right there, after she'd crossed the stage for a vocational presentation. So she received a just like a not a diploma, but just a document saying that she'd passed the what's it called, the
GED.
Exactly, GED. Thank you. And so this was the first time, this photograph right here was the first time that I learned about visual rhythm. And there's all these elements in there that repeat themselves. I mean, there's the flower kind of resembles a little barrette in her hair. And she's wearing black shoes with white socks, and the mother is wearing white shoes against black leggings right there. And the little girl has stripes on her dress, and the mother has polka dots. And to me, it kind of has a flag motif. And so even the hands are in similar positions right there. And the flower is placed, the white flower blossom is placed over the darkness of the mother to contrast against it as well. So to me, this has, in addition to being what I find is a really nice composition, essentially what it means to me is that she's looking at that flower as being representative of her hopes and dreams. So that's just what it means to me. And so photograph to me doesn't have to be about one thing. They can be about multiple things. And there'll be other examples as we go along in this presentation. Next. So this photograph was taken, same thing for the same newspaper, Manteca News, and this was at a children's shelter. And so I was legally not able to show the child's face. And so I angled it so that I could not see the front of his face. And so it's almost like a yin yang right there. You've got the dark and the white right there on the right hand side, contrasting each other. And then there's the retro game at the time. About 1988 was when this photograph was taken. The retro game of Centipede right there. But the creature, to me, represents kind of like the danger of the world to children right there. And so this was a children's shelter. And so it was just something that was a personal interpretation while still telling the story that for the newspaper. Okay, next. A person that George probably remembers from downtown Modesto. His name was Rick. And
Yep, I remember.
He was a street person, and he was very, I don't know if shy, but antisocial might be a better word. Some people would claim that sometimes he'd get really kind of nasty, spit on people. I never saw that myself, but word got around like that. So one day after I'd asked him over the course of a couple of years, would I'd see him around downtown if I could photograph him. He always said no. And one day he came up to me and he told, this was about 2012, after I'd already moved out of Modesto. I came back, and this was also on 11th Street. I came back and he said that he was hungry and asked me for money to buy him some food, to buy food. And of course, if you give money to somebody, you don't know what they're going to do with it, if it's really for food, if it's going to be used for something else. And so instead, what I did was I went a couple blocks away to McDonald's and got him some food from there. When I came back and gave it to him, I said, "Okay, now that you know that who I am, now may I get a portrait?" It wasn't really a pay to play thing, but it was more about that. Now you know that I'm okay, and he allowed me to do his portrait, and so that's how I got that. And it's one of my favorite portraits. Sadly, about within a year later, he died, and I don't recall how, but this is a record of a person's life at a point in time, at a particular location. So next. Another one of my favorite newspapers, photographs from the newspaper in Manteca. And the lights are in fact sunlight streaming through holes in the top of the big top right there. And the reason why they're defined like that as spotlights is because of all the dust that was in the air at that time. And I believe that it is no longer legal to use elephants as beasts of burden here in California. So this also, and I'm glad for that, but this also is a record of a point in time in roughly about 1988, same thing. This was in the Central Valley, a Portuguese bullfight. Portuguese bullfights are bloodless, at least for the animals, theoretically. Not always for the people who use it, who are participants in it. So what they use is they put Velcro on the back of the bull, and then they use, it's like a game of darts with the Velcro on the end of a little wand. And so rather than being, it is done by horseback. And it's really, so this is one of the caballetas that were in that as she was, as the sun was setting and she was getting her horse warmed up for the arena. So. And Donald, of course, knows where this would be, being a San Francisco person himself. Was 2012, before the addition had been completed for the Museum of Modern Art. And so this was the Yerba Buena Gardens water feature on the mezzanine. And I didn't have a tripod, but there was like a ledge nearby, and so I just set my camera on the edge there and set the timer, gave it long exposure, and this was the result. So feel free to use, if you forget your tripod, because sometimes it can be very burdensome to take one with you. Find something to put your camera on and to secure it and get a good exposure. And with the digital backs now, you can see the results right there. Okay. Next. And this was another unplanned photograph. This is the first time I'd ever been inside Saint Ignatius. This is the church for University of San Francisco, USF. And so there was another event outside there was an art installation outside in the square of the university. And they had some other event going on, or they had the church open. And so I went inside. I had like a mini tripod that I had in my backpack, and I set the camera on the mini tripod on the floor and gave it a time exposure and probably something like 30 seconds. And and this is a result of it. So next, okay. Now, now we're going to get into my aerial photography. Aerial photography has been a big passion of mine for a number of years, since since I first started photography in classes in 2005. I learned of the aerial photographer William A. Garnett, and he was a recipient of 3 Guggenheim Fellowships. He was kind of like the Ansel Adams of the air. He photographed for Time Life, for Fortune magazine. He had, did I already say that he was recipient of 3 Guggenheim Fellowships?
Mhm.
I think I did. Okay. So one day a coworker of mine I'd mentioned to him about William A. Garnett, and he did not know who he was, which kind of shocked me. It's like not knowing who, other prominent photographers were. And so I did a search on him on Garnett and found out that he was living in Napa. And so I contacted him, and after a period of time of discussion, he agreed to let me do an article on him. But he inspired me to delve into aerial photography as kind of a niche that I really loved. So I paid for these initial flights out of a flight service out of Tracy, California, some out of Stockton, and one out of Sacramento. I probably did about 8 flights over the California Delta, and this was taken near the Altamont Pass, where all the windmills are right there. But the drama in the photograph kind of reminded me the working title of this photograph is Calvary, and here we are in Holy Week, and so as being a lapsed Catholic myself, this has kind of a quasi-religious symbolism to me, So, okay, next. And so this is just a bit of whimsy to me. I thought, I was walking down the street and I saw this man painting this line, and just it seemed kind of absurd to me that he'd have to paint a little bit of of the line on this building right there, and then he'd have to climb down and move the ladder a little bit more and paint the line, and so it just seemed kind of like a tedious, absurd exercise in futility. So there you go. Next. Okay. One of my aerial photographs. And one of the things that I'm really interested, probably more than anything, is design. And it's something that I've acquired over many years. It wasn't my intent at the beginning. But William A. Garnett was somebody who was very interested in design. And if you look at his photographs, and you can Google him, and you'll find many, many photographs of his, who sadly passed away in, I think, 2006 at the age of 80, I think 86 himself. That is the core of what his photographs are based on design. Okay, next. Same thing. This is in Napa Valley, and this was on Spring Mountain. And in 2020, Spring Mountain was hit by the glass fire. and a lot of buildings and a couple of wineries. And this hillside terraces right here were damaged, destroyed by the fire right there. And so this was taken in 2016, and the fire hit 4 years later, and the Cane winery was destroyed. And I just flew this past Monday for the first time since 2020 over Spring Mountain, and it looks completely different. There's been a lot of erosion after the fire. The vineyards are all gone. A little bit of terracing is there, but it's not anything like it was. It is not plantable right now. They haven't done anything in the way of restoration for that, and I don't know when or if they ever will. Okay, next. This is down by Mill Valley, just right off 101 right there. And sometimes you can be driving along the freeway and not even know what's there, a couple hundred yards away. And so that is what I really love about aerial photography, is that you get to see a privileged view from that standpoint. And back to what I was saying about the design. And this was a direct result of the influence of William Garnett, because he had one very similar to that, which he called the title. I'm sure he had a few of them, but there's one in particular that he referred to it as a dendritic flow was what he called it. And so it's kind of like the fractal-like tree-like structure of the waterways right there.
So
Yep.
this is Botham Marsh, right there by the freeway, right?
I don't know the name of it, but it is right off the freeway.
Yeah, it's just Botham Marsh. Yeah.
Okay.
I've never seen it from that angle.
Okay. Next.
Wonderful.
Thanks. Thank you.
Donald has a question, by the way.
Yes. Yes.
There, excuse me. Are you in a plane? How high are you?
Yes. I was in a plane at least 1,000 feet. That is the minimum altitude that you can fly out over occupied land.
When were these taken? What year was this?
This would have been about 2017, I believe.
The other thing, what have you considered using a drone or?
I have. Yes, I have. I just haven't gotten around to it. I took a drone piloting class at San Rosa Junior College in 2019.
Wow.
I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But someday, hopefully fairly within the next year or so, I do plan on utilizing
These fantastic images.
Thank you.
Great.
So this was taken on Peninsula. That is Redwood City. That is a Google campus. At the time, it wasn't a Google campus. It's called Pacific Shores, right near the airport, San Carlos Airport, right there. And that would be the bridge. I'm trying to remember.
Dunbarton?
That is the Dunbarton Bridge, yes. And so I just like the layers of that right there. This was shot with a 200 millimeter lens by helicopter. This is the only time that I've used a helicopter in the Bay Area, and I used it once. And from there, I flew over San Francisco. It was about an hour, maybe an hour and a half flight. And that was at the time, 2016, about $750, which for me was really a bargain because you can shoot a lot of photographs in an hour and a half. And because of the ability to hover and you can fly lower, like I said, in an airplane, the minimum height altitude is 1,000 feet. With a helicopter, you can go down to 500 feet. And then with the 200 millimeter lens that I'd rented, a Canon 200 millimeter. I use an old Canon 5D Mark II, and that is 2009 era. I just haven't gotten around to upgrading since then. You know, it's just me. I'm pretty old school, and but it works for me. So, and I was kind of shocked to find out that I could you could photograph SFO flying over 101. That's same thing goes along with the design that people just don't see from the ground level. Okay, next. So this the building on the left right here. This is not from an aircraft at all. This is from another skyscraper. And the building on the left is the Millennium Tower. And the building in the middle, that is 50 Fremont Street, which is also known as Salesforce West. And the building at the right, yes. The building on the right is 350 Fremont Street, excuse me, 350 Mission Street right there. So I just like the design of that as well. Oh, another thing too. People talk about different types of compositional techniques. You know, rule of thirds, blah blah blah. You know, the S curve. I love, as somebody who loves music, to me, I think a photograph like this constitutes, for me, represents visual music. And so I can, you know, I'll bet you that even nowadays, that if you could put an image, a photograph into some AI program, that you'd actually be able to generate music out of it. So to me, I think of this as kind of like a visual soundtrack. So that's another thing that I can suggest to you all, if you're interested, to think as you're composing things. And Donald, I know that you've photographed so many skyscrapers and buildings, and that I've seen in your amazing photographs, is to think of it in terms, and I know that you photographed all three of these right here, is to think of it as think in terms of, I'm photographing a score. So that's just something to think about in the back of your mind as you proceed in your street photography or in your architectural photography. Okay, next. And this is kind of a changing face of the skyline of San Francisco right there. Of course, there's the you know, the clock tower lofts right there, right off the freeway, and the peak right there. Right behind it is 33, what used to be called 33 Tehama. And I say used to be because that is the building that a 6-inch water pipe burst on the roof and flooded the entire building and had people out of there for 2 years. And so what the company that owned the property decided that they wanted to rebrand it, because 33 Tehama had already a bad rep for it. So it's called something else. I can't remember exactly what the name is now. And then at the right is the kind of the base of Salesforce Tower. At the right, you see this square blockish thing. Donald, you recognize that, don't you?
I'm not sure what that is.
On the right hand side, and that goes to the upper side, that is 500 Folsom Street right there. But the compression, I shot that from a distance. Believe it or not, I shot that from the 23rd story of El Verde skyscraper, or residential tower in on the other side of Oracle Park. So it's a really long shot compressed into a very tight composition.
Yeah. What lens are you using there?
Well, I shot that with the 135, but I had a a doubler on it.
Yeah, yeah,
So that was the 270, and
Yeah.
then I cropped in tight, and
Yeah.
so that added to the compression of it as well.
You got everything standing up straight and everything's great there.
Yeah.
I use that Canon 5D Mark II also all
Okay.
these years. It works fine. I don't use it anymore. I'm using the phone camera now. So
Wow.
yeah, the great presentation here.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Okay, next. So this was from another skyscraper. This was a residential tower on Rincon Hill. It is now called the Harrison, but it had another name before that. And then so one thing that I really enjoy about the upper view, the higher perspective, is that people normally don't think of, they're usually at the bottom looking up rather than knowing what's on top looking down. And so I've flown over San Francisco probably at least 15 times since 2013. And so I know San Francisco from the air probably better than I know it from the ground. And so, this perspective of buildings, this lineup of buildings from left to right is probably, I think most people wouldn't even know where they would say they've never even seen those before. But if you see in the background, right at the center is the ferry building. Just to give you a sense of direction right there. But, wander around. And I know not everybody gets a chance to get up on a skyscraper to photograph down, but I've made my connections. Use your connections when you can. So, next.
Yeah.
This is San Francisco. Some people call this with the ticky-tacky little houses. Right? They're all in a row. This was near Bayshore. The name of this subdivision is called Portola Place. And so I just, like I said, it's in a neighborhood that most people don't go to, don't really know, a part of San Francisco that is not a tourist destination. But, when you fly, you can see these perspectives and these patterns with a lot more clarity. Okay, next. And so, so this was 2016, January 2016, and in flying, I saw the container ship getting ready to enter the Golden Gate, and so between the pilot and I, we, did kind of a wide turn so that way we could synchronize the flight time at the very time when the container ship was going underneath the bridge right there. And so it just gives a sense of scale and not only period of time from the standpoint of this happened, because in photojournalism and also in the way that, I talk about the photo as evidence that this happened, that's in essence what I am saying when I take a photograph documenting an event or a building or a person, is that this person, like for the photograph that I showed you of the homeless man earlier, that this man was here on Earth. He lived. This happened with this container ship going under the bridge. And a year later, this container ship from South Korea, Hanjin, filed for bankruptcy. So it's no longer in existence right now. Okay. So next. And this was taken from a skyscraper. This was from 340 Fremont Street. So I had the opportunity to, through a contact in a construction company who I had offered to do photographs for, to give him aerial photographs that I had. In exchange for that, he allowed me to go up to different construction sites while they were under construction. And so while I was up there, I was able to photograph this other building. This is 399 Fremont Street. which is obviously right next to the bridge right there. And just the juxtaposition of that right there was a part of the history, the design, the exposition of what it looked like. Most people will never know about, that bracing on the side of the Bay Bridge right there. Okay, next. And this, George will know about this as well. This was, Modesto is an agriculture area, and this was at a local cannery that I worked for. This was Tri-Valley Center, which at one point in time was the largest cannery in the world. And I worked there for a summer in probably 1980, maybe 85 or something like that. But after I did my flights, this was by helicopter. We flew over, and I just loved the literal steampunk design of this right there. And it's also a question of as not only a photojournalist, but I'm also a curious man, a curious person to wonder how things work. And that was like, I talked about my father earlier being self-educated. He was a curious man as well. And so in learning and getting older, to find out how systems worked, to see it's like, it's like architecture and engineering and any kind of process, because really basically all these photographs are about process, one process or another. So think about that also as well. What is the process for this as well? Whether it be, steam capture, for processing of the fruit, vegetables, etc. Okay, just a tip. Next. This was the Silverado Country Club after the Atlas fire in 2017. And the fire came down with such force that it just incinerated these houses, these mansions down there. I mean, to call them houses is kind of understatement right there. But the really interesting thing to me about this, because in addition to documenting this tragedy, the aftermath of it also begs the question, because if you look at the lower left of the photograph, you see that there's a house that is burned down there as well. So it begs the question, what were the physics behind, this inferno, this firestorm that went through and burned, skipped a couple houses right there and burned the one right next to it. It's I know there's answers to it, but to me, it helps raise the questions by way of documenting what happened. And going back to what I was saying earlier, this happened. And you can't get that sense from ground level. You have to see from a perspective of the air to be able to see the trajectory of the fire. And some people have said when they see photographs like this, well, it was an act of God, or so does that mean that the people whose houses burned deserve to have their houses burned? I'm not going to say that, and I don't believe that myself, but just a question. Go next. So this was from the Santa Rosa Tubbs fire in 2017, which occurred at the same time as the Atlas fire, the previous one right there. And that night, when the firestorm broke, 5,000 houses in Santa Rosa were burned to the ground. I mean, that was kind of the beginning of this climate crisis, demonstrating the severity of our actions and what the results of what we have to not look forward to, but what is to come. If you recall, the LA fires, the Palisades fire, Palisades fires, etc. And so this is just a record of just, the intensity of the heat right there, just melting that backboard right there. And the net, didn't burn, and which is kind of amazing. Next. Okay, so we're kind of going in a different direction now, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about design. And one of the things that I want you to, as an assignment, is to, when you go out and photograph, for the historical record that this happened, this was there, but have fun with it. To me, I like the semiotics of this, just the signage of it, the meaning of it. But ultimately, what this is about, to me, is about design. It's about the layering. The unofficial title that I have of this is Polygons. Okay, next.
I couldn't find the raising the hand button, but why didn't you crop out the top of that parking sign at the bottom? Down here. Hello?
You mean at the very bottom of the pole on the right hand
Yeah.
side?
Yeah.
Because that would have cut into the bottom of the gray rectangle, vertical rectangle right there.
Do you ever make things disappear?
Not like the no, not in documentation.
Oh, yeah, that's an important point that photojournalists are not allowed to modify their photos. That's
Yeah, and it's also for the historical record. So I mean, to me, it's I can live, I can live with it. It's
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me in the least at all.
I think it's interesting. It adds a little bit of it says no.
Yeah, I
I
like
think it
that.
adds a little bit of compositional impact there. I like it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the question. And going back to design, this was like I said, just go along the street. And so when we do street photography, a lot of times when I do street photography, a lot of times it is difficult for me to, however many times I've caught people candidly, sometimes it's really difficult to cap, especially when you've got this big camera with this big lens right there on the street, to be inconspicuous. I know, like Donald was saying, now he's using his phone, which is a lot faster and blends in a lot easier because that's what people carry these days. But a technique that I use, it's not necessarily a technique. It is a result of my interest in capturing design and things like this, the semiotics, the design of the world around us, is a result of me photographing an object like a manhole cover or a sign or something like that. Is that somebody may be coming by and think, oh, that guy's just getting a photograph of the manhole cover, and they let their guard loose, and then in a split second I can raise my camera and get a candid shot, and they never know that anything happened. So think about that when you go out. If you feel a little uncomfortable photographing people, if you feel too conspicuous, then try photographing other things at a periphery and be ready to raise your camera quick to get the shot. Next. Going back to what I said earlier about photographing the things around us, the semiotics, the signs, we already know that this is no longer useful, but someday it's going to be gone if it isn't already. This has probably taken maybe 2014 or so. And so how many times have you gone by a business or a building or a park or whatever sign, and it's gone, it's burned down, it's been demolished, whatever. So if you see something that appeals to you, just photograph it. Don't worry about getting the perfect lighting or things like that. Yeah, that is the ideal, but sometimes it's important to just make sure that you capture it. And for me, like for example, when you go to some of these specialized city groups, like Remember When Santa Rosa, or Remembering Modesto, or San Francisco, blah blah, you find out that the photographs that oftentimes are the most liked are the ones that that show a sense of place that nobody else got a photograph of. It's just lost to memory because nobody thought about even get a photograph of it at the time. So think about that as you're going along. As I said earlier, that I think I said this, that that photojournalism is the first draft of history, and history can be major events or it could be minor events like this. Just the fact that this existed right there. Okay, enough about that. Next. Same thing. What I said earlier about the when you photographed an object and people are going to drop their guard right there. It would not be, in my opinion, it would not be as good a photograph without the man right there looking at his phone right there. But this is on the corner of Howard and First Street in San Francisco right there, and the light on the metallic elements of the sign right there was really what I was looking for right there. But it just happened to be that the person with my wide angle lens happened to, be in it as well. I mean, that was my intent. It wasn't an accident, but it allowed me to get a beautiful light while at the same time having something there in the background. As I said earlier, a photograph doesn't have to be about just one thing. It can be about many different things. It could be a couple things, could be many things, could be something philosophical, compositional, a political, social statement, etc. Okay, next. George. So there was a really well-known local bakery in Modesto that when we were in elementary school, all the kids would go to the bakery and we'd all come home with a bag of bread, the rainbow bread. And so this is probably taken about 1979. And I have not posted this anywhere because to me, it's valuable and it's hard to explain. But what I want to use this photograph for someday is a pride T-shirt or element, by way of the rainbow, So, like I said, it has multiple meanings to me. This my memory of going to the bakery as a child is everybody in the whole school district in Modesto. They knew that they could talk about the smell of the baked bread. It was it was a memory that was deep inside them. And then also just the way that this was, obviously hand painted right there. So it's, it's not perfect right there. So I like the handicraft of it. And then it's abandoned. You can see that the tire's flat. You have things just thrown away. And then one day it was gone. And
that's an incredible photo. You should be proud of yourself for that. I like the trash in the gutter there, bright white trash. That's a real classic photo.
Thank you. Okay, next. Does anybody know where this is? No, in San Francisco. This was at the corner of Mission and Valencia Street. There was a fire in this building. It is now closed. The signage has been defaced. I think part of that Ben Davis sign is still there, but it was iconic over the years. And I never even went into it. But when I lived in Bernal Heights, neighborhood of San Francisco, for 2 years before moving to Santa Rosa, and so I'd pass by this all the time. And so, like I said, sometimes you can pass by something and never think to photograph it, and then it's gone. So if you see something, I'm going to tell you again, photograph it while you still can, because one day it may not be there. Next.
Hmm.
This is the top of that building that I said earlier, the skyscraper in on Rincon Hill. And so I was in one of those utility baskets, the window washers basket. It also was window washer utility basket that I was in, had to be secured into it, tied in before we went up. And this was taken with my 135 Canon lens, and it gave just a nice perspective to the background of the 101. Excuse me, not the 101. That's 80 right there in the background right there. And no, I'm not afraid of heights. And so this was one of my favorite photographers. And if you like whimsy, if you like slice of life photographs, search the photography of Elliot Erwitt. He was a magnum photographer who passed away, I believe, 2 years ago. And so I invoke his name because he, in one of his books, he wrote, if you point your camera at someone long enough, they're going to do something absurd. So think about that as your photo. And the other thing is to be ready. So I had seen this guy at a construction site nearby, and he, in his break, he got his skateboard and he took off down the street. And so I'm kind of following him along. And so he said he'd come back. He never knew I took the photograph, never mentioned it to him. But it was just a bit of whimsy that where else but in California are you going to see where else in the US or in the world are you going to see something like this except in California?
The people around are just perfect. He alone in the crosswalk wouldn't have been as good
Right.
as with the two women there and the guy looking over here. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, all adds to it.
Thank you.
Great. Love
Thank
it.
you. Okay, next.
Ah,
So this is on Mission Street. Donald, do you know where this is?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
did you?
So this is on Mission Street, 555. It's 555 Mission Street, and there's what are called privately owned public open spaces, POPOs.
Popos.
Yeah, and so the thing about modern construction is that they are required to have public art there now. They're required to do that. And so I don't remember the name of this sculptor right here. And there's, I think, 2 or 3 other faces in that little plaza right there. But this was obviously Halloween. She never knew I took the photograph. This was, I believe, a 135, and I just, how could I resist? But of course, if it had only been her, it could have been okay. But what really adds it, and it looks like, the sculpture is like whistling at her. It's just going back to what I said earlier about whimsy. A little bit of humor added to it in your street photo. So always be ready to just grab your camera and get the shot. And one more thing, I've been seeing a lot. How are we doing time wise?
I can't see it's 8:18.
Okay, I'll try and step things up a little bit. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos with different influencers about photography, in particular street photography, and they all talk about, not all, but most of them talk about, oh, you got to use a wide angle lens for street photography. I personally don't feel that way. I love having a little bit of distance between my subject. I even shoot from across the street a lot of times. I don't feel like I have to be right there in their face to get a photograph. And I like the results that I get shooting from a little bit of distance. Okay, next. Okay, that is in the same little plaza right there. And no, he's not interviewing them. This is a straight actual photograph. And it was an architectural tour, and he was part of the architectural tour, and he had a camera at the end, a video camera at the end of that extension pole right there. It just happened to be over the head of that sculpture right there. So
Oops, so sorry, so sorry.
So when you're photographing, always be scanning around, see what else is going on, and kind of wait for things to happen. So extrapolate and kind of predict what may happen or what's probably going to happen, considering these elements that are going on right here. So just be conscious of that as you're photographing. Thank you. Okay, next.
Yeah.
So this is a historical place. Now, I mean, a photograph, not a place, a historical photograph from the standpoint. It has a payphone right there. $2.99 for a dozen donuts, and now it costs $2.99 for one donut. And so it's, across the street at sunset, balancing the ambient light, the available light of the setting sun, the twilight, with in the upper left hand side, that blue light right there, mercury vapor. You've got the fluorescent lights inside there, so you've got this mixture. Usually, you try and avoid the color shift in photographing, but this one, it really works, in my opinion, in having these different. And once again, with the handmade sign, the ragtag, the ghetto. There's a word in Spanish called rascuache, which means just kind of make and do with what you have. In this part of Modesto, George,
South
Cruz
Modesto.
Landing Road. I mean, it's kind of, a lot of towns have, the other side of the tracks, and this would be an example of that right there. But you won't get it if you don't go there. Next. Okay, this is my Abbey Road photograph, my homage to Abbey Road. Okay, always be ready. Next, a second one. This was on 11th Street. I found out that that a wedding dress shop was moving their inventory to their new business 2 blocks down. And so rather than cart things down by truck, it was just easier to put them on racks and walk them down. And so I just waited, found out when they were going to do it, and just waited. And I was on the opposite crosswalk from them and just photographed. I think that was probably with the 85 millimeter. 85 millimeters, kind of my standard everyday lens that I use for music, for street photography. 95% of my street actually all my photography, I would say, is done with an 85 for the past 20 years. Next. This was also done with an 85, and this is, I consider, probably my finest photograph. And I'll explain why in a second. So it's kind of counterintuitive to what most people would think compositional wise from, I think of the artist Piet Mondrian, where you've got yellows and reds and blues. Essentially, those are the 3 colors that he used in his palette. And he would use them to use as a ratio to say that this plus this equals harmony amongst the entire composition right there. And this is similar to that, and it's cropped from side to side. This was across the street. This is on Bayshore Boulevard in San Francisco, just down the hill from Bernal Heights. And so I was across the street with an 85, and I waited there. I held my camera, braced it against a telephone pole, a utility pole, and waited. There were people who walked by. Somebody on a bicycle came by. Somebody was walking their dog. And then this woman came by holding this. It looks like a canvas, a big canvas she's holding. Could be a sketchbook. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But you've got that big black, literal empty negative space right there, which theoretically should be the main draw of your eye. And then you've got the big field of yellow right there, which you see caution signs. They're meant to get your attention. So that should be grabbing your eye. And then you've got the red up there, and you've got these interesting Chinese characters right there. And then you've got little border of blue on the right-hand side. So all these elements should command attention themselves. But where do we look first? At the person. So think about that as you're composing your photographs. You don't need to be in tight on them. You can have the person be just a small element, and they'll still become the subject of the photograph. Probably.
Yeah.
So within that frame, if you look at that, she's at full stride. She's completely self-contained within the yellow. She doesn't go into the black, not 1 inch. She doesn't go into the blue, not one inch at all. She's completely within there just by happenstance. And I say happenstance because I had my Canon 5D Mark II with the battery pack below it, with fully charged 2 batteries inside it right there. So, and then with a fast compact flash card that buffered quickly. And so all those elements came together to make sure that I caught that right there. It was an accident, I will tell you, an accident that caught her perfectly within that. But as Ansel Adams quoted Louis Pasteur in a Dick Cavett interview where he said, "Chance favors the prepared mind." And so that's where you go to have all these elements together, your focus, your point of view, your batteries charged, your motor drive, blah, 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 and then anticipate what is probably going to happen right there. And it was, like I said, to me, it is a perfect composition, if I may say so myself. Okay, next. So what is this photograph about? Well, like I said, photograph can be about many different things. So to me, a photograph is about the design. And the person just happens to be an element in there. But without the person, I mean, it might work as a composition without the person. But I think that the person, especially the state that he appears to be in, of a drunken stupor outside the bar, adds the element. And then you've got his hat on his knee right there. So all these elements. So your eyes move around. This is another thing that I want to tell you. So as you crop, and this is cropped, as Marty asked earlier about cropping, why didn't you crop that out? This was very tightly cropped. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot either way, but I wanted to make sure that the bottom of the sidewalk came right to a particular edge, and that the yellow border on the top and right hand side were at the right proportions that I wanted. And also on the left hand side, just to the left of the doorway right there, that you had what's called breathing room right there. So there's a certain kind of ratio. You kind of have to play with it a little bit when you're cropping to kind of figure out what pleases you and what is probably the right amount of space to leave there in a border that doesn't crowd it, but doesn't get it too loose either. And I think this is the right amount for me. But also all these other elements that, as in the other photograph with the open door, the big doorway, that big black doorway, it's almost like the 2001: A Space Odyssey monolith right there. The big black, it becomes an element itself. And then you've got the glass block adding a texture to it. And in fact, this was taken in Lodi, California. So the title of it is Stuck in Lodi Again, for those of you who know that song title. Okay. Next. Okay. Once again, the person as element right there. This is in Guadalajara, Mexico, 1979. And the doorway right there becomes another element. So I don't do a whole lot, but just this little series right here is about doorways right there and how they can be included there as elements unto themselves right there. And you got the geometry of the metalwork, you know, in the doorway. And you've got the texture of the peeling paint around the doorway and the blue, and you've got the lower left-hand side. You've got this tile work right there that ends on the right. And up above the woman, there's peeling paint as well. And if you look right in the middle of that field right there, there's a line that comes straight down at her. And if you look on either side of that line, you can, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like diagonal lines that come in that join right there. Like it's almost an arrow pointing down on her. But in addition to all that, the woman has that white glow of hair of her, glow on her hair, backlit, not only her hair, but also on her shoulders. Now, how is it that there's that backlight on her, but there's no light that you can see on the bottom? If it's backlit, you theoretically should be able to see some sense of light. It just happened to be at an angle, not planned at all, where the light just went out of frame at the bottom. Didn't clone it out, nothing like that. That was in the original photograph. It wasn't in it at all. I didn't visualize that at a time. I just took the photograph from across the street, and she just happened to turn around and look at me. That was with the 100 millimeter lens, Canon lens on film. Excuse me, not film. 64 Kodachrome 64. And if you see her cane, there's a slight blur to it because it's a motion blur, and everything else is sharp except for that as well. So anyway, another one of my favorite photographs. Next. Once again, I won't be redundant on the point, but same thing. The door is like the monolith in 2001, and you got that big field of cyan, but still the subject is obviously the baby right there. It just happens to be sit out with the white balloon. Okay, next. Just a street photograph. Next. So this was, believe it or not, this was taken at the same festival. It was a parade. It was the Carnival parade, and they were not near each other, but the gesture. Go back one, please. The gesture of the two of them, the leaning against the wheeled cart, the child, and then go back. She's wearing red. Got the next one. Woman is wearing red as well, right there as she has her hand. So it's kind of like the riddle of the Sphinx. You know, what creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? And the answer is man, human being. 4 legs as a baby walking on 4, 2 legs as an adult walking, and 3 legs a person walking with a cane. So anyway, next. Okay. Candid photograph, 85 millimeter inside an indoor event. And so to me, this is not only a composition that I like that has 3 separate, totally isolated interactions going on right there. But as a Mexican-American man, it also now in this Trump administration means to me that Mexican-Americans aren't criminals and a a draw on the on society. We're just human beings like you and you and you and you, and we all want the same thing, and we all have the same feelings of laughter, and we have our phones, we've got our interactions, we have our joy, we have our love, we have our friendship, we love art, we have our vanity, we like our selfies, etc., etc. Okay, next. Okay, well, this is self-explanatory. This was 2014 at the N Judah stop, just off of, it doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Okay, next. This is one of my favorite photographs. This is on Valencia Street, and I talked earlier about when I showed the photograph of the little girl and what I talked about visual rhythm. So I was photographing bicycle riders as they're riding down Valencia Street, just to have for my part of my archive. I just wanted to have a slice of life for this or that. And also, who knows, as we're looking, I'm always looking to monetize something, to sell something for a stock photo, blah, 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 whatever reason. I don't know if that's necessarily the case here, but I just wanted to have it for my archive. But it just happened at this point right there. I didn't even know that I photographed, that there was a dog in her knapsack when I took the photograph, nor did I see that there was a bicycle in the window right there. You know, I was just photographing her, and then the woman on the right, she's having a problem with her bicycle, and the person walking by was helping her. So all there's like a flow around there, just a visual draw that just keeps your eye moving. And then the cherry on the top of that is the little doggy there in the back of this beautiful little dog in the back of that knapsack right there. Okay, always be ready. There, speaking of dogs, I love dogs right there. This is on Bernal Hill as well. And just, you know, a dog walker, dog whisperer right there. You know, he didn't need to have them on leashes. They did whatever he told them to do, and they're all just captivated there as he eating an apple and spitting out little pieces of apple. As you can see, he spit one out, and is that a border collie? Whatever. Yeah, I think
Australian.
y'all
Australian Shepherd.
Australian Shepherd. So, you know, they're just all at attention right there, and it's lifted up and open its mouth to capture the piece as to grab it as it's in flight. Okay, next. Anybody remember crowds pre-COVID? This was at the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass music in 2013. And that's the only time I've been to one of those events. And I don't think I would ever go back to them. I just don't like crowds anymore. As you can tell, or maybe you can tell, that I'm at the front. And a friend of mine who had access gave me her pass to get behind the fence right there to photograph. And rather than the band that was performing was Gogol Bordello, and I like to turn my camera away from performers and photograph what's behind them, and the crowds and the reaction. Okay, next. This is downtown, not down. This was Mission Street, right in an alley where the illumination is from a sunlight bounced off of a skyscraper about a block away. So what I want to recommend to you all who don't do this already is to learn how to underexpose and or overexpose on the fly, just by virtue of the intensity of the light in the scene. In other words, there's a lot of dark areas, and you've got just little spots of highlights of sunlight in there. And so just automatically, I know by experience, and it's going to take experience for you to be able to learn that and do it instinctively. I knew automatically just by the difference in the light ratios between the subjects and the background that I'd have to underexpose about a stop and a half automatically. I didn't even have to take a reading. I just did that, and I shoot on RAW all the time, and so that gives me enough latitude if there's a little bit of fluctuation exposure, and I always shoot on automatic exposure, shutter preferred. I have a tremor, and so to shoot with aperture preferred for me would sometimes go down to a shutter speed that would be too slow for me to counteract the shake of my tremor. So okay, next. Going back to what I said before about Elliot Erwitt, looking for whimsy, looking for a visual rhythm, a repetition. This was Mexico City, a park there. I don't know if these two were married to each other. I hope they were. But the repetition of the entanglement, the working title of this is Entwined. And I got one shot off quick and just moved on. They never even knew I got the shot. So, okay, next. Now, I was told by someone once said that I cropped this so tight that I could be a rabbi. And this was in San Francisco in 2013, right in front of San Francisco City Hall. And it was announced that there was going to be a nude protest against an ordinance that Scott Wiener, as in written on the top of that, the man's hat right there, had proposed to ban public nudity in the city. And so this gentleman and a couple of other people were nude there in front of City Hall. And the media were there. They were interviewing him from the waist up, obviously. And suddenly this blind woman came walking by, and he walked away from the TV camera. He grabbed her by the arm, and he escorted her up the steps of San Francisco City Hall. And I don't think she knew until it was in the Chronicle, not my photograph, but someone else, until the next day that the man who was escorting up the steps was nude. So this was another Elliot Erwitt whimsy slice life photograph for me. Next. Mexico City, just, personal one right there. Just a little bit of whimsy. Not much to say. Next. This was about 2 weeks after I moved to Bernal Heights in 2011, and I went for a walk, and I saw this composition helping me. I mean, before it happening, and none of the three even knew that I took the photograph. And I, got the quick shot, and to me, it just, was a street candid, and makes a visual statement that is open to one's own interpretation. And this reminds me of the old question, who is the better dancer, Fred Astaire or Ginger Rogers? And the answer is Ginger Rogers, because she did everything that Fred Astaire did, but she did it backwards and in high heels. So in this photograph right here, the woman, the wedding photographer, is very gracefully walking down the steps of San Francisco's City Hall Rotunda with camera in hand and high heels. And I would not attempt that myself ever. So anyway. Don't have much to say about this, but just dancers. I love photographing dancers, and this one was in was a ballet folklorico, and I set my camera on a tripod from the back of the theater. I got permission to photograph, and set it at about a 15th of a second, just to get the blur of the swirling dresses. Okay, next. I think we're almost to the end. And this was so I volunteered to photograph for the Modesto Symphony Orchestra, and so there's a protocol and an art to photographing live performances, especially one in which most of it is quiet, and you need to make sure that you do not disturb any of the audience at all. And so so this was taken not only during a loud portion of her performance, but I'm usually the conductor, David Lockington, has his back to the audience and thus the performer. But this was one where it just happened to turn around and I was able to capture it. This was with I think a 200 millimeter lens that I had borrowed from a friend to get this shot from the balcony in the Gala Center in Modesto. Next. And this was taken at the Hess collection in Napa Valley. And this was a chamber orchestra festival that I was photographed for them. It's called Music in the Vineyards, that I photographed for 5 years. And so I photographed from the back on a tripod with a cable electronic release on there. And this was done with live view. I usually don't shoot live view hardly ever. This one I did for obvious reasons, that to hear the clunk of the shutter would have been disruptive. And so I'm looking at the live view, and at the end of the performance, the bows are up, which is the ideal position that you want to have the bows up, or that you want the musicians to have up. And by chance, the vocalist looks straight at me, at the camera, and the gaze of the artwork behind is also looking directly at the camera. So it's kind of like this repetition of a theme right there. And I believe that's the last photo right there. So let's check. Nope. One. Say the best for last. And that's it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Fabulous presentation.
Yeah.
We also have a photo challenge. I'm gonna let Adrian tell us about that.
Well, it is as the title of the program is, for the record, I want you to think of things from a historical standpoint. Photograph as if you're photographing for the historical record. And, whether it be a sign, whether it be, in this case, a video game, which is obsolete now, or what, I showed the photographs of the old, police sign, the police little call box right there. You decide for yourself what it's going to be. And so just think in terms of, as you're walking around, or it could be around the house, around the neighborhood, things that you want to record, that you want to make sure that subject is photographed for the historical record. And that's pretty simple, but because we have things all around us. Could be our own house. Could be even if you have children from a young age, or grandchildren who have. You remember when in our youth, many decades ago, at least for some of us here, we'd have posters on our walls of, maybe I had Easy Rider was one of the posters I had there. So think in terms of that, I wish I remember what my room looked like when I was a kid. And, whether you have children or grandchildren or grandparents, think in terms of or an aunt or uncle or whatever, think in terms of that. What does their house look like? What does their kitchen look like? What do they have on the wall? What are the containers that they have? Etc. You decide that for yourself. What's historically important to you? It's all very personal to you.
Awesome. Well, I will post that on our Facebook page, and
Okay.
hopefully everybody will take a crack at it. And again, I want to remind you all that next month we have Xander Santucci. He's going to be our youngest presenter, so I really hope you'll all come. He's going to be speaking for 30 minutes, and Terry Scussel is going to do a short presentation for the second half. So I just didn't want to put too much pressure on him. So I really hope you'll all come. It's going to start at 7. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, Adrian.
You're welcome. And I'm sorry it went on a little bit long, but
Okay. That's all right.
I want to
was
say,
wonderful.
Adrian, that was an excellent presentation. I've taken down several notes.
okay.
Visual rhythm, visual music, and some of your quotes. I've written them down. Your explanation of some of these photos were just commonplace photos was amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's very inspirational.
Thank you so much. Okay, now that I've met the great Donald Kinney, now I can put a face to his great artwork. So
There you go.
thank you, everyone.
Thank
you very much.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See y'all next month.
Thank you. It was a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.